Here in Stanislaus County. I'm a member of the CMN board and more than grateful to see all of the familiar faces and the new faces who are here today. So before I get started, I want to be sure that I am doing this right. So for those of you who are online, we have individuals who are on Zoom. Please, everybody in the room, give a hand to John Torres in the back, who's manning the Zoom. We have a great audience who's always online, and we definitely do our best to try to keep them engaged. So shout out to John Torres in the back and his wife who are helping out with the Zoom this morning, all right? So a couple of logistical things before we jump in and get started. If you are here in the room, we want to invite you to please like, follow, and tag City Ministry Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Building our online presence is essential for us to continue to get the word out on Catalyst, to continue to share with the community all of the great things that we're doing, all of our partners are doing. So if you're here, please check in, please tag City Ministry Network, take photos, all of that good stuff. Additionally, if you're online with John, please be sure to mute your mic. In addition to that, you could use the chat function right now. Go ahead and chat your name, introduce yourself to the community of online individuals who are tuning in. Thirdly, is just to restate the purpose of Catalyst. Catalyst is an environment, or tries to create an environment that is strengthened by difference and connected by trust. We are here to connect individuals from diverse backgrounds who come from diverse sectors, and the goal is to unite, to empower, and to collaborate. We are essentially trying to build trust with individuals who may not be connected to each other outside of this place. So we know that today is a great speaker, and we know that just naturally it's political, and no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, we ask that you have an open mind to collaborate, to work together, and to have an ear to hear. It's essential for us to build this community, and difference is not something that we shy away from, but it's something that we are driven towards. So we just want to encourage you that you have a voice here, that your voice matters, and that you matter to us. So feel free to share your perspectives, but also be open to hearing others. I know that my time is running short, but I just want to enforce one last thing, and that is if you are here, please be sure to sign in. We'd love to know who's in the room so that we can keep in touch and whatnot. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the questions. So all of you are at tables right now, and before we begin, we want to give everybody a chance to talk, share, introduce each other. So we have a couple of introductory questions. Here they are. I'll go ahead and read them off. Quickly share about a time when you were able to build a relationship with someone you always didn't see eye to eye with. And also, what are 3 of the greatest assets we have in the community and why? So we ask that you guys all share. I'll come back up when your time is up, but please be sure that everybody at the table is able to have some time to speak. Thank you so much. Good morning, and can we give everybody a round of applause for being here today? Thank you. All right, I'll let you go ahead and finish up the last thought. As you guys are finishing up, I'd like to just give a couple of logistical things. If we can please give a hand to our speaker, Congressman Josh Harder. Let's go ahead and give him a round of applause. 1 second. He's done some amazing things here locally and for this district. But before we begin, we've been so privileged to have a Q&A scheduled with him this morning. But we just want to go through some logistical things to ensure that everybody's on the same page. After his talk today, if you have questions that you would like to ask him, behind me are the details on how you can share a question that you'd like to ask. So feel free to text this number with your question, and we'll have a representative here of CMN ask it to our congressman. So again, if you have a question for Congressman Josh Harder, go ahead and text this number during and after his presentation, and we'll go ahead and share it with him. Now, before I introduce our congressman, I just want to thank everybody again for being out here, and also want to thank Congressman Josh Harder. I have been privileged and I'd say blessed in being able to get to know, I call him Josh, over the last couple of months through CMN's Latino Leadership Initiative. I had the privilege of having Josh be my mentor. So once a month for an hour, we talk about life, we talk about our spirituality, we talk about our visions here for the local community, and he's been a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of wisdom, and he's definitely somebody who I call a friend, and I'm privileged to be able to be in contact with. So thank you to CMN, to John Torres, who leads the Latino Leadership Initiative, and to all of the community who has come out and supported the initiative in droves. So let's go ahead and let's get started. I'd like to introduce Josh Harder, who I have a bit of a bio here, who is the 10th, who represents the 10th Congressional District of California. His family has been in the Central Valley for generations, and his great-grandfather joined a wagon train in search for gold, but stopped just short to start a peach farm in Manteca. Let's go ahead and give all of our farmers a round of applause, okay? A round of applause for all of our farmers. And Josh was born and raised in Turlock, California, and graduated high school in Modesto High. He earned his political science and economics undergraduate degree from Stanford University and a joint MBA and MPP from Harvard Business School and Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Josh Harder.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm really grateful and inspired by the friendships that I've made with folks like Manny through the City Ministry Network and their Latino Leadership Initiative. It just makes me so optimistic about our community's future to see folks like Manny stepping up. And I know that there's a lot of other folks in this room who are on that same journey. And so thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I got to confess that when I got this invitation from Marvin, he said 7 o'clock. I thought he could have meant 7 p.m., and I was really excited. I'm not necessarily a morning person, but I'm doing my best. And I'm thrilled to be here because I think the Catalyst program is foundational. The mission is foundational. And it's the exact same mission that I have in my work in politics, which is trying to bridge all the divides, try to celebrate the differences in our community that Manny highlighted, trying to bring people together in a spirit of unity, and actually getting things done, trying to push our community forward. Unfortunately, that's not always the situation with a lot of our politics these days. And I've shared a story with a couple of you, but I think this is a good place to start. I won an election in 2018, went on out to D.C., didn't know what to expect. I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed new member of Congress. I was staying at this big hotel with all these other new colleagues of mine. I went out 8 a.m. Monday morning for my first impression of life in Washington, and there were 2 big buses there going to the Capitol to take us for the first day of work. And I asked the security guard, I'm like, which bus should I take? And he says, well, there's the Republican bus and the Democratic bus. And that really was really frustrating to me. I ended up walking. I ended up grabbing a bunch of my colleagues, walking to the Capitol instead. It was nice to get a breath of fresh air. But I think that sets the tone of so many of our politics these days. And I think that's why you see a lot of folks more interested in spending their time screaming at each other on cable news instead of actually working together to get things done. But that's not what the Valley is all about. The Valley is a place where more likely than not, when you sit next to somebody at church or at school, at work, you're probably going to sit next to somebody that has slightly different views than yours. That's a good thing. And we should be celebrating those differences, trying to work together, and trying to actually fight for progress. I'll just talk about a couple of the things that I'm working on right now. And then I know we're all exhausted by Zoom after 2 years, and so I can only put my heart out to the folks that are on the Zoom. And I know I don't want to talk too long because I know it's going to be exhausting, and so we'll try to take as many questions as possible. But a couple of the things that we're working on, I think probably the most important pressing issue across the Central Valley today is healthcare. when we were at 0% ICU bed capacity in the height of COVID, it wasn't because we didn't have a lack of bed space, it's because we didn't have the nurses and the doctors to take care of everybody that we needed to take care of. Just a couple of days ago in the Modesto Bee, there was a story that I think is very common. I've heard many of these stories from some of our healthcare workers over the past few months of a guy who had chest pains, who went to Emmanuel in Turlock and couldn't see any doctor because they didn't have any capacity. That happened this week. And so we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are upgrading our healthcare systems. In some ways, COVID just exposed the cracks of our healthcare system that have been around for far too long. And we know one of the reasons is that we just don't train enough healthcare practitioners from the Central Valley. When we do train them, it's hard to keep them here. Many of them want to go out and work in private practice in San Francisco or Los Angeles. And I don't fault somebody for having $500,000 in medical school debt, going and trying to make a living somewhere else. They got to do what they have to do. But we need physicians and nurses too. And so one of my top initiatives in office is to create a loan repayment program for physicians working in areas of need, allowing folks to pay back their student loans automatically if they actually work in an area like the Central Valley where we have a dearth of physicians and nurses. That'll bring 10,000 doctors to our area just in the next couple years if we're able to get that done, which I'm hoping we can do by the end of the year. That's an initiative, by the way, that we got every single Democrat and Republican in California on board with. We got a letter written by folks like Ro Khanna, who chaired the Bernie Sanders campaign, and I don't always see eye to eye with. And then we got folks like Louis Gohmert, who's probably one of my most conservative colleagues in the country, all on board with the same initiative because rural areas have the same needs, whether they're in Texas or California or anywhere else. Doing some good work there. One or two other things that I'll talk about briefly. The second is jobs. Every morning, we send 97,000 people from our community over the Altamont Pass for work in San Jose, San Francisco, or somewhere else. 97,000 people. Right now, as we're here, some folks have already been on the road for 2 hours driving to work. We have the talent to build strong businesses. We already have strong businesses here to continue to build on that legacy. But we need to do a lot more to welcome businesses across the Central Valley and to really be a beacon of prosperity and jobs in an area where we had an unemployment rate pre-COVID that was 4 or 5 times some of the other areas of California. We need to bring some of those jobs here. Right now, just to give you one example of something that I think will really address this, you can get a college scholarship from the federal government, fully paid, if you want to go and get a 4-year philosophy degree, but not if you want to be a maintenance mechanic, a 6-month job that actually pays, in Stanislaus County, $100,000 a year. That's a good job, and yet you're not eligible for the same federal scholarships. That's wrong. We need to make sure that we have an education system that connects with the needs of our business community. And so we actually have businesses that have great needs and don't have to go anywhere else to find folks that can do it. It breaks my heart when I go and talk to some of our high school students who want to stay close to home. They want to stay living where they have community, where their friends and family live, and yet they can't necessarily find a job. And then right after that, oftentimes, I'll meet with some of our top businesses, and they say they want to hire locally, but they can't find the people to do those jobs. That's broken. We have to be able to connect those two things and make sure that we are feeding an education system into a business community that has so much potential. We are the breadbasket of the world, the fruit nut basket of America. We have to make sure that we are building on the agricultural legacy that's been brought down from my great-great-grandfather and so many others across our community. Part of that also means we have to safeguard our water resources. We have not built a new reservoir in over 40 years anywhere in California, and in that time, California's population has doubled. We need to make sure that we are coming together to actually build projects and not just talk about them. That's what we're trying to do. I try to focus on projects instead of just leading to folks in litigation that are going to have lawyers suing each other, to actually get things done. And we're working on a number of water projects that I'm hopeful are going to be able to get construction even in the next year or two, so we actually can start to see some progress there. They should have been built 20 years ago for a drought like this one, but at least we can get them done even now. And then finally, I'll just close by talking about one other issue that I'm very focused on these days, which is wildfires. We're dealing, obviously, with fires across the state, millions of acres on fire. Some of our fire chiefs and firefighters joke to me that it feels like we're in the 42nd annual worst fire season ever. Like, it always, continually, every year, gets worse and worse. And we need to make sure that we're getting these fires under control, and better yet, to prevent them from getting this bad in the first place. The smoke alone is such a cost to our community. We already have the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country right here. I had childhood asthma as a kid. My brother had it as a kid. And these fires are just going to make it worse, let alone the loss of life, the loss of property that is ensuing. And we know what needs to happen. We need to make sure that we are managing about 10 million more acres than we can currently manage of forest land across the state. That's what's going to take to make sure that we are using 21st century practices, hiring enough firefighters. Right now, we have fire trucks sitting idle because we don't have enough firefighters to do the job, because the starting pay of a federal firefighter in California is less than minimum wage. Until a couple weeks ago, when we were able to get that fixed, creating a raise for 15,000 firefighters across our area. But even then, we still don't have enough folks. We need the people, we need the equipment. I'm working to get 7 C-130 planes transferred over to CAL FIRE to make sure that we give our firefighters all the support that they need. So far, we've gotten 4 of the planes transferred, another 3 left to come. And then we need the practices. We need to make sure that we are safeguarding our environment and our community to make sure that the year that we're having this year, the year we had last year, doesn't become the new normal for the future. Lots more to talk about. We're working on an array of fronts. Our community has a lot of needs, but I'll stop there, and some of the things we're doing on healthcare, on jobs, and some of the fires that we're dealing with right now. But thank you so much for having me, and excited to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm in the back, so you probably can't see me, but I'm manning the incoming texts here. So first of all, we have a question here. Could you share some thoughts regarding the differences of borders both on our north side and our south side? At least the impression is that our Canadian border is closed, the Mexican border is open. Could you speak to that?
Sure. I'm not an expert in what's going on at the Canadian border, so I'll defer there. But I think neither border is entirely closed. Both allow some traffic of both commerce and people, but a lot less than they did a year ago. I think it's important to have some commerce traffic. I mean, just to give you guys an example of why it's important, we produce only about 2% of the almonds that are produced in California are consumed in California. The other 98% go everywhere else across the globe. And so we need to make sure that some of these borders are open, not just with Mexico and Canada, but across the country, across the world, so we can sell our produce everywhere else. That said, I know that border security is a very important issue, and it's a very important issue to me, and we have to be able to put our community safety as a top priority. And that's not a situation that's new in the last year or two, that's been ongoing for a long time. And we need to make real investments to make sure that we have a strong, secure border that ensures that we can have good commerce, but also protects us from bad folks going on. There are many times where we have had an overwhelmed border patrol, where we have drug cartels that are coming in, and they are trying to overwhelm our border patrol at certain points. They're using pretty devious methods, and then they're trying to get drugs and even human trafficking across the border. Just like we have military and security operations anywhere else, we need to make sure that we have the resources for our border to keep safe. And so I'm a big supporter of making sure that we are giving our Border Patrol the resources to do that and trying to use 21st century technologies. We have so much technology right now, whether it's drones, whether it's alerts, to make sure that we get the most up-to-date information. We have a very large border. A lot of it is very rural. Some of it is very focused, right? I mean, what's happening at the San Diego port of entry is very different than what's happening in rural Texas. We need different technology to manage that. But we absolutely do need technology to make sure that we have a strong border. So when the question was, is the border open? No, I don't think the border is open in the fact that anybody can come across. Obviously, that's not the case. There's commerce, legal commerce that is happening, and some illegal commerce, which we need to make sure is we're cracking down on. So I hope I answered that question, but if I missed a part of it, I can.
All right. Okay. We'll move on to the next question here. So it has to do with the medical professionals, and we have a shortage of medical staff already, and then the concern is about the vaccines and the conflict that's taking place, those feeling like they're being pushed to get the vaccination. How can you help with that problem?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, I think all of us probably know someone who has gotten sick or even died because of COVID over the last year. And it's not as bad today as it might have been 6 months ago, but cases are climbing across our community. And like I said at the very beginning, we do not have all the healthcare resources that we need. And so we're even in a situation right now where not everybody is getting the healthcare treatment that we might hope because our emergency beds are getting so full. They're not at 100% quite yet, but they are climbing. And I think it's important that we remember that we're all in this together and that we use every safety measure we can. And that means masking when you can, whenever you are in a place that requires that, or even optional if you're okay with that, and getting vaccinated if possible. We have a vaccine that is safe, that is effective, and that is free. I got vaccinated, my parents got vaccinated, I pushed our team to do that. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. I would encourage folks to talk to their own medical professionals, talk to a doctor that they know. 99% of our doctors are vaccinated. I think that speaks a great deal about how effective it is. And I think our community spread would be in a very different place if we were at 70, 80% vaccination as opposed to the 50% that we're at today. Now, I'm not necessarily saying we have to require that. I think we have to be able to work with people to get them there, but I do think there's a place for all of us to make sure that we are addressing some of the misinformation that exists out there. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of a lack of trust in our healthcare community. There's a lack of trust in our politicians, and often rightfully so, which is why that I try to be cautious and focus on bringing people together instead of creating any more divides. But I think given where our community is right now, the best thing that I can do, the best thing that we can do as a community is make sure that we are all coming together and pushing for every health measure possible over the next few months, and make sure that we can kind of get this pandemic under control as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you. So another question here. When is the ACE train coming to Modesto?
Soon. So, look, like I said, we have 97,000 people that commute outside of our community every single day. Some of those folks commute north-south. They go to Sacramento, which is where the ACE train is going. Most of those folks, though, go over the Altamont Pass. And so I think we need more transportation options than just the ACE train. One of the things that I think would be a game changer for our community is expanding BART over the Altamont, where it terminates right now in Dublin, over to Livermore, eventually to Tracy, Manteca, Modesto. That's not going to happen tomorrow, but getting mass transit over that, regional rail, instead of the high-speed rail that a lot of folks are focused on, that unfortunately has been behind schedule and above budget, I think that regional rail path has a lot of potential. And the ACE train is a big piece of that, and so hopefully is some sort of a BART expansion. Even those two projects are not going to be the answer for transportation across our area. The ultimate solution is going to be getting more jobs locally. And it's frustrating for me when I talk to some businesses who say, well, we don't know if we want to go to the Central Valley. We don't know if there's the talent. We don't know if there's the education. I say, what are you talking about? Look at 99. Look at 205 at 8 a.m. any morning of the week, and you'll see how much talent we have. We have folks that are already working in your companies. They're just driving 4 or 5 hours a day to do it. And so what we can be doing is making sure that we are supporting our local businesses to expand and create more jobs, and also making sure that we're trying to get more businesses to come on in. So some of the stress on those commuters who have to wake up at 5 and spend an awful lot of hours in the car is reduced, because we can actually bring folks to work and closer to home.
Thank you. Next question. How can you make sure that prayer is a priority in our country?
That's a great question. I think it's something that I would defer to your judgment on, and what you would like to see. I'm somebody, I grew up in the Evangelical Free Church, now Crossroads in Turlock, and I think spirituality is very important to me personally, but I think we also have a diverse community and a diverse country. And I think we would be in a better place if we actually took some of the values that I learned in my church, that I learned from this community, and actually pushed them across the country. Values like unity and bringing people together and trying to work together for a common good. In terms of prayer, I think we have a national prayer breakfast, and I think I'm very open to any ideas and suggestions from this audience and from our faith leaders across our community about what I can be doing to foster stronger relationships between our faith community and our political leaders, and vice versa. And please, if any of you want to add me to your prayer lists, please do. I very much appreciate it. It makes a big difference, and it helps me and also my wife sleep a little better at night, knowing that we have prayer warriors out there who are doing their best for us. So that'd be my number one ask.
All right, thank you. What is a leadership lesson you have learned since going to Washington?
A leadership lesson that I've learned since going to Washington, I think one of the lessons is just trying to come into conversations with folks without any preconceptions. Obviously, we have so many preconceptions about people. You look at somebody, you judge them based on how they're dressed, who they are, and the like. And unfortunately, that can often be an impediment in working together. And that's something that harms me just as much as I think it harms anybody else, and even maybe more so, because Congress is a place that is deeply representative by its very nature of our country as a whole. And we have to work together across folks that look completely different, think completely different from the community that we do. And so I have tried to find some unlikely partners in strange places, and I think my lesson has been not to judge folks before I actually have a chance to get down and talk to them. I'll give you one example. I came on into office, and I was talking to a lot of our farmers, and we were talking about water and trade and all the typical things that I think you hear. And one of our farmers said, "I really want you to work on eradicating these swamp rats." And I was like, okay, fine. Like, that sounds like a problem maybe in your farm, but that can't be a systemic thing, and I sort of ignored it. Then it came up again and again and again in a number of our Farm Bureau meetings, and I started looking into this, and we had a big swamp rat problem. We have this, basically this swamp rat called nutria. It's about 60 pounds. One female has 200 offspring a year of a 60-pound swamp rat. They're enormous, and they are completely invasive across Louisiana, and they used to be invasive across Maryland, and they can be an enormous pest. And if we don't eradicate this species over the next couple of years in California, 500,000 of them will be all across our state, and they destroy trees, they destroy reservoirs and water infrastructure and wetlands and all the like. And so I took on this issue. It wasn't necessarily the number one issue in anybody's mind, but I think it was an important one that was going to help a lot of our farmers. And we ended up getting it done. We ended up getting 100% of Republicans and Democrats in the House and 100% of Republicans and Democrats in the Senate to sign on to and support legislation eradicating this invasive species across our state. President Trump signed that into law about a year ago, and it's working just as planned. But in that process, I had to go up to a lot of folks I hadn't talked to ever before, who I didn't think were going to agree on this, and actually find some common ground. And so I think that leadership lesson is all about trying to just, take people as they are, not actually judge them for who you think they are going to be, and trying to work with folks no matter how they look at you or how they look to you, because we need to be able to work together if we're going to be able to get stuff done.
Excellent. Thank you. One last question. We'll leave you with an easy one. One of the writer here says, one of the unintended consequences of the financial aid that's been given due to COVID was that people are choosing to live on unemployment instead of working. Do you and others in Congress realize that continuing this is holding back the economy and can be making people lazy?
I think we need to get people back to work. I think that the American economy, that our own philosophy is based on making sure people are working. I think that's a good thing, and I think we need to do more, and we don't want to reward people for sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. That's not really how our economy functions, and obviously we have a big labor shortage. I would contest how much of that is actually due to unemployment. For one thing, the supplemental unemployment has declined, and it's over with, and yet we're not necessarily seeing a big pickup of folks jumping back into work. So that suggests it may not just be unemployment insurance. It's probably to do with a lot of other causes. For one thing, people do not have very good childcare across a community like ours. I talked to a lot of folks. If you're a single mom, you have 2 kids who are, last year they were learning over Zoom. Is it really all that easy for you to leave your kids at home when they're not allowed to go into school in person and then go into work somewhere else? It's not that easy, and so you're probably going to have to juggle a lot of things. Similarly, there's a lot of folks in our community that dealt with folks who had pre-existing conditions. They had family members that they were really worried about getting COVID, and there was just a lot of fear about this disease. And so there were a lot of folks that were reluctant to go back to work because of it. So I think there were a lot of factors that actually led to the labor shortage that we've seen over the last year. And like I said, now that the unemployment insurance has gone back to where it was in pre-COVID levels, you haven't really seen people jump back in to the workforce. So I think we have to do a lot more work to make sure that we are creating opportunities for folks to go back. I think what that looks like is trying to make sure that we can reduce all of those other things that are keeping people away from taking up that job that might be available. Part of that means that we need to make sure that we are pushing for better childcare options. Now that school is back in session, now that folks are pushing for in-person learning, I think that's a huge step in the right direction. I think we did a lot. I think we did a disservice. I think there was a disservice done to a lot of kids when we were keeping folks out of school for an entire year. The learning loss, the socialization loss was enormous, and I think it's incredibly important this school year that we keep folks in school as much as possible. Second, we need to do more to bring down COVID levels across our community. And that's going to do a lot to make sure that people feel more confident in going back and taking a job when they might be a little bit on the fence. And third, there are rules out there on things like unemployment where we are not allowed, and we should not be allowed, to pay folks if they have a job that's available to them that they just don't want to take just because they want to sit on the couch. Those laws, however, are not always being enforced. The California Unemployment Office over the last year has been a complete mess, to put it lightly. I've spent a lot of my time screaming at them. We just do not have an unemployment system that was set up to accommodate the job losses, unfortunately, that we've seen from COVID. And so that's something that we have to fix, and we have to enforce those rules. And that's not good just for our business owners that are trying to make sure that we have folks that are employed. That's good for all of us. Our economy is strongest when folks can actually go out and get a job, take it, and need it. That's something that I think we all can hopefully look forward to and work together to make happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Manny?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for coming.
Let's please give another round of applause to Congressman Josh Harder. And I heard through the grapevine that you and your wonderful wife celebrated 3 years of marriage. So let's give a round of applause to her as well. Brother Jeremiah, thank you so much. So with that, let's go ahead and let's get back into our tables and let's have a short discussion. There's 2 questions that I'll read off, and go ahead and have 10 minutes at your tables to go ahead and discuss them and share your ideas. The first one is, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest opportunities facing Stanislaus County? And the second one, what is one idea shared today that you found helpful and informative, and why? So 10 minutes at your tables. Go ahead and share. And please make sure that everybody at the table has a chance to share. Thank you.
Well, Josh's picture was way better looking than me. Historian John Meacham got up this morning, and I wrote this down. John Meacham, the renowned historian, said this: politics is about the mediation of differences and the resolution of problems for a given time. Politics is about the mediation of differences and the resolution of problems for a given time, not a battlefield for constant warfare. Not a battlefield for constant warfare. And our system was set up so that after a few years, after a period of duking it out or arguing our differences, then we look at each other and we shake hands and we say, how are we going to work together for the sake of those who need us? It was never meant to be a battlefield over and over and over again. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple things. What I'm not saying and what John Meacham is not saying is to stop caring. Now, I'm confident, and we got responses about just this month's Catalyst and others. We're not saying stop caring about what you care about or what I care about. We're not saying that. I'm also not saying put away your concerns. We're not saying that at all. We're going to keep caring. You're going to keep being concerned about what you're concerned about. But what I am saying, what I believe that John Meacham is saying, is that when it is time to put election cycles away, we look at each other. If you want to shake hands, just shake hands. But you look at each other and we rally to the fires. We rally to those needs of those common people. And candidly, I don't care. Okay, this is just Marvin. I didn't ask my board this is just me. This is not city minister. I don't care what political brand you carry. People have been sick. There are so many needs that we've got to figure out how to work together, even in our differences. And candidly, there are always going to be those differences. We've got to figure out how to work together. So, I know I'm going to get misquoted. I'm not saying stop caring. I'm not saying stop being concerned about what you're concerned about. What I'm saying is we've got to figure out how to rally together. So oh, thank you. Okay, those of you who send me a text and email, see, you got clapped on that one. So, and this week, I've been a part of a couple of conversations, and I get in my car, and I think, oh my gosh, that was exhausting. Why can't we just figure out how to do this together? Figure out what we have in common. Rally to the fire. For seasons, and this is a season, we've got to work together for common good. We have to do that. We have to. I was talking to my wife the other day, and the more you work with the poor and the marginalized, you realize there's so many gaps and issues that we just got to care about for everybody. For everybody. You see, we say a lot in City Mission Network that nothing gets done in our community without trust and relationships. So when you have trust and relationships, you are in the flow of the benefits. You're in the flow. You get benefits. But when you're an outsider, for whatever reason, you get left out. And my challenge to us this morning, and my encouragement to you, and I beg you to do this, is that those of us who are in the flow of relationships and the know and power, whatever that might be, influence, we take that and we carry it over to those that are outside of this and bring them back into the flow. And we've got to continue to do that together, whether we agree on every issue or we disagree. We've got to do that. And I can tell you, I have been called, City Minister Network has been called to a different standard. And I would say most of you here in the room are like that too, and on Zoom. We are called to be different. The Bible says a peculiar nation, a peculiar people. And so we've got to do it differently, which means in this season, of all the rancor and all that, no, Stanislaus County, we do it different. We do it different. We get to sit down with people that you might think are different than you or see things differently, because the fires are burning and we've got to work together. Leaning on our strengths. We've got an incredible strength, as Josh mentioned. Wonderful. We have an incredible strength in our county, as well as working on our growth edges. So that's what I want to say to you today. We're going to continue as a county. We've already been in private conversations to begin to organize more of us together so that when the next pandemic hits, and this one isn't over yet, candidly, it's probably an endemic. It's going to be with us for a long time. But whatever next crisis hits, we've discovered places, all of us have discovered places where we could do better. And the only way that's going to happen is if we do it together. Yes, and that means being at a table with somebody that you don't see 100% eye to eye. Yeah. And you do it. You do it. I was at one of the restaurants this couple of days ago, and this man comes up to me. I think he was the plumber or something, a scruffy guy, and he looks at me, and he's got to be, almost over 50 for sure, a little bit older than I am. And he has his mask on, and he says, Marvin Jacobo? And I look at him and I say, well, oh, who are you? Yeah, I am. Who are you? And he gives me his name, and he says, do you remember me? And I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't. But I hope you have good memory of me, that kind of thing. And he says, yeah, he gives me his name, and he shakes my hand, and he says, I just want to say to you, you've been important to me in my life. He said, and he says this. He said this, and I'm going to get this right. Carry on, soldier. Carry on, soldier. And I thought, and I went to the bathroom, and then we came back, and I said, his name was Steve. I said, Steve, say that again. Carry on, soldier. And he had been in the military. And I want to say to each one of you and on Zoom, carry on, soldier. You carry on. Be encouraged. And you were never meant to be discouraged and on your own. And I know some of you are struggling with your budgets, with your staff, with your families, all the stuff that's going on. I get concerned about Josh and his young marriage and just all the pressure that goes on. Yes, he's a human being, by the way. And we should care about each other as human beings. Okay, I'm sorry, that's another sermon. So I just want to encourage you. Listen, you don't have to struggle alone. Find a trusted other and say, hey, can you be my friend? And I said that the other day to someone, just be my friend. Just be my friend. So let's be friends. That means we can be candid with each other and trust each other. But we got to work together. There are too many fires, and I'm not just talking about Calder fire. I'm not talking about just Dixie fire where my wife, her family lost everything in Greenville. But it's everywhere in all kinds of different ways. And we support our congressman in prayer and friendship. Do what we can for the sake of those who need us the most. Whether you agree or disagree, we've got to do this together. And I hope that's the message you hear this morning. So I'm going to pray for us. Master, thanks for Josh and his leadership. And I thank you that in America, it's great to be an American. We can disagree, we can agree, we can argue, we can whatever it is. And as John Meacham said, for a season, put that away and figure out how we can work together. Pray in Stanislaus County, that's what it would be like. And in one sense, Lord, I am preaching to the choir. There are men and women in this room and on Zoom that are working together, that are trying to figure out how to collaborate, to improve their collaborative skills, to have candid conversations, private, quiet conversations with those that they disagree with. the courage to be in a room with those that might see things differently. And Lord, you've asked us and you've challenged us and you told us we've got to be different. So I thank you for that. Thanks for Josh and his family and all that he's meant to us. We pray for him. Give him wisdom beyond his age and his experience. We all know that Washington is a hard place. And Lord, you just told me, yeah, and Modesto and Stanislaus County are hard places to lead as well in the public sector. So we pray for our mayor who's online today and others, city council members, board of supervisors. David Collins here, who works for Center for Human Services, and they're working with homeless young men and women, boys and girls, almost 300 of them in our county that are homeless. It's a fire, and we got to solve that problem. But may each one be encouraged. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you. So stick around and talk. And this is what we're here about. It's 8:06. We got it done early. Have a good morning.